Thank you very much for joining us for the 6th Parsha series of the Rabbi and the Yes.
Wow.
Of the.
I thought it was 7.
Feels like 70.
Yeah.
Well, after the long Shavuot that you didn't sleep, and I was supposed to be not sleeping too, but I transgressed. If some of us appear a little bit more tired.
Let's just focus on the Parsha, please.
Okay. I'll bring my sin offering later.
I had ice cream, if that counts.
Cheesecake. I'm very excited to have amazing guests with us today, and of course my best friend Ross over here, Rabbi Akiva, and here is Bruce, a famous lawyer and a fighter for rights of everyone who tirelessly works to make sure we are safe. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you,
The
Doctor.
Parsha today is Parshat Naso, and that is meaning to carry. And it's really the longest Parsha, if I'm not mistaken.
The longest Parsha in the Torah.
In the Torah.
Sure.
And it's a lot to carry unless you're Samson, which is someone we're going to be discussing in the Haftarah, the Jewish Hercules. And he is different than Hercules, and we'll discuss how. And is it actually something that is good to be a Nazir, to be a kind of like a monk, which is not exactly the same. But is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And does the Bible consider you elevated when you do commit yourself completely to God? Or do they think that you're still missing some things? So without further ado, it's a fascinating Parsha. I'm really, really excited to have it dissected by this amazing, brilliant team here.
Let's focus on the first thing. First of all, welcome, Bruce.
Thank you very much,
Welcome.
Rabbi.
Great to see you again. And of course, our good friend Ross over here. A Nazir is a Nazirite, somebody who takes upon himself a vow to attain a greater degree of Kedusha, holiness. So 3 things he can't do, we discussed. What were the 3 things?
Not drink wine or products of grape,
Okay.
not cut hair,
And
and not to touch or be in contact with dead bodies.
human corpse, the person can't become tameh. We discussed Tumah, the idea of impurities in the last couple of lectures, in the last couple of classes. So Nazir, so I think Eyal's question, and Bruce, maybe you want to take this, to become a Nazir, or you said it like a monk, an ascetic type of person, is that something that Judaism views, well, the Torah breaks down in Parak Vav over here, chapter 6 of Sefer Bamidbar, the Parsha of Nazir. And Dabra b'nei Yisrael matalehem isha, a man or a woman, ki yafli linda nedem Nazir lahazal Hashem. They make a vow to be a Nazir to Hashem. So what word jumps out at you over there? Laha Hashem. The idea is what? What you learned the Parsha. What do you think?
In terms of...
Not to put you on the spot.
No. I'm happy to be put on the spot. It's not a problem.
So go ahead.
The question you're asking is why
To God.
Why are you doing it to God?
Well, the focus needs to be God.
Right. So I think, for example, people often, like Esther did, she wanted to abstain from food. The moment you are removing yourself from all the bodily pleasures, from food and other things, your body gets into temporary, and then physically it's been proven, temporary high. And during that temporary high, things become clearer to you.
Okay.
And that's what...
I guess all the sugars are going through your body and your mind.
Well,
and
you're
obstructing your view. But
no, they don't go into your gut.
Gut,
into your
no.
mind, it never gives up. It will take your bone. It will destroy your bone to get the glucose it needs. But it all concentrates here, and the energy, the oxygenation, everything goes into your computer, into your brain.
The difference, I think, over here, and Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the impetus for Esther was to fast for 3 days, so the Jews would be saved through Haman, the Hitler of his time. Over here, I think the impetus is different. And Rashi and the Gemara, the Talmud, bring down that the focus of a Nazir is, what's the previous parsha? What's the previous section of the Torah? It's talking about the Sotah. We've discussed this in previous years. And the Sotah is the wayward wife who might or might not have
had outside intercourse.
And the point is they have
outside relationship.
That's a relationship from a husband, and that's the discussion in that parsha, which is obviously a destruction of a family unit, or the paranoid, or the suspicion of a husband to a wife.
Yes.
And I always say that the parsha of Sotah is a way of God telling the husband, to be worried or not. She drinks the waters. It takes away all suspicion. If she's guilty, this would happen. If she's not guilty, she'll be clean. It really takes away all the paranoia from the husband to the wife. I think it's miraculous, no question. And I think it's great for the finality of suspicion and clarity of mind for marriage, although it seems very interesting to many people. But that being said, if someone witnesses the destruction of family units what causes this family unit to be destroyed?
Suspicion.
Suspicion. No, but maybe someone took a drink, went to a bar, went to a bar mitzvah wedding, had too much to drink.
Lost control over
their faculties. And the next thing you know, we know what happens when a person's a drug addict or an alcohol addict, or even if they drink too much, things could change in an instant. So when a person sees that, what Rashi brings down from the Gemara is that a person is inspired to take the first step to build themselves up against that. So the Nazirite says, I'm not drinking wine. I'm not doing that. I vow no wine. And is it looked at with askance or with goodness? It really depends probably what the focus is. The Gemara in the Nedarim brings down, one of the great rabbis said, he was a Kohen in the temple, and he says, I really don't usually eat from the karbanos, from the sacrifices of the Nazirite, because I don't necessarily believe that all of them have purity of thought and mind, except for one who I met, and he inspired me that his focus was correct. It's an interesting thing. Does Judaism commit to asceticism? Do the monks of the 11th century?
So the debate is whether one commits to God or to self.
That's very good. It's a very good way of putting it.
Beautiful.
But it's interesting. Rabbi Joseph Breuer, the son-in-law of Rabbi Shamshon Hirsch, legend has it. You've heard of him, right?
Yes.
He traveled a lot, and they asked him, Rabbi, you're traveling so much. He goes, God made the world for me to see. God made the apple for me to eat. God made an orange and a banana and a mango and cows and that's obviously for food purposes, and the Swiss Alps and the Grand Canyon. God wants humans to enjoy the world. And the Gemara there says, so you said it's such an interesting thing before. Why does a Nazir bring a chatas? A chatas is a sin offering.
Sin offering, yes.
And what's the answer?
Well, I mean, I have to say that I wasn't trying to figure out long. I looked at the answer, what they were suggesting, and the answer is when we're trying to elevate ourselves, we should elevate ourselves within our society, because in the process, we bring others with us. And when we are moving outside of the society, we separate ourselves, and then we elevate ourselves. We are kind of cutting ourselves out from the unit.
Nazir separate? He's not living separately. He's living in his house. He's not like the leper,
right?
The Baal Mitzorah, who lives outside the camp. He lives inside his home. He just secluded himself. Rashi over here, Shlomo Yitzchaki, the great 11th century commentator on the Torah, which I'm sure you've seen many with your Lower East Side friends, right?
Yes.
Bruce? So he brings down two reasons why the Nazirite has sinned and needs to bring a sin offering. And one of them, look inside over here. One, he didn't take better precautions to avoid contamination. If he becomes tamei, he has to bring it, not in all cases. And the B is the one I was trying to drive to. He deprived himself of the pleasures of drinking wine.
So, Rabbi,
Yeah.
I beg to differ with
Rashi?
one of the. No, God forbid. I'll disagree with you or Ross or the doctor.
Go ahead.
But a Nazir, by taking on these vows, is brought to a higher madriga than anybody, and in that he's given certain powers to protect his people. Now, when you talk about the monks, they can't be on the same level.
Of course not.
Because the monks were busy riling up the crowds to burn the Jews at the stake. So how could you make a comparison like that?
Of course not. So let me be clear. A Nazir has a great status. Shimshon HaGibar in the Haftarah was a Nazir, Bruce. And if you misunderstood,
No.
A Nazir has a very high status. Within the realm of his Nazir status, there's an idea that there's a small amount of sin because he abstained. But he took the steps needed to protect himself from sin, which is a very high, what was the word, madrega.
He's on a higher
level,
madrega than the average person.
For sure. I'm not asking at the
Madriga means a step in Hebrew.
a level.
Level, yes.
Right.
Yeah, I guess modern Hebrew means a step. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. So of course the Nazir has a very high level. There's a much deeper discussion over here, but I think the idea is, of course, not like a monk. We don't necessarily look at asceticism as a way for a Jew to live. We live within the world. We discussed this before. You eat an apple, you make a bracha, you elevate it.
You just thank God for everything that He gave you to enjoy. And if you can't thank God for the wine, which we do first, even before we do the bread, then we can't thank Him for
Right.
one of the most important gifts
God
that He
forbid,
gave us.
I'm not criticizing anything. I'm just telling you what the.
So the fact that he doesn't enjoy life to the fullest, he has to bring an offering.
Exactly. But within the realm of whether or not he feels he has to make this vow in order to reach the level. Like for example, many times we have to step back from our lifestyle in order to reach a greater connection to God. Right? I want to make shachris in the morning, so I'll go to the Sephardic shul over here at 6:15 or 7:15, the shtibel at 8:00. I want to make minchas. I'm going to leave early during the winter to make the mincha minyan at Judge Bruce's office. Right? I want to keep Shabbat, so I'm going to have to draw back from my pleasures of the world. Even though because I want to connect with God. So we're not necessarily a Nazir, we're not Nazirites,
Right.
But we want to connect with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So there are multiple levels of understanding, I think, of what's going on.
Well, that's why I was saying initially, when you want to concentrate on something, you need to take away some distractions, whether it is food or other stuff. You're getting into the zone. People may be talking, but you're not really hearing them.
Right.
And that's where perhaps the wine. But there is a medical thing that we can discuss later about when we're going to be discussing about Samson, the Haftarah, about why specifically he was told about the wine and my theory about that, which I wrote a small thing about. No. Let's finish. Let's finish. For those who are watching, it may be a little bit confusing. So let me just briefly give you a summary of the chapter in Nasan. So Nasan means to carry, and in the first chapter that we discussed, Bamidbar, in the desert, they're in the desert and they're going through counting. They're counting the number of the men between the ages of 20 and 50,
60.
20 and 60. They're army men, and they're what?
I think you're right. Okay, go ahead. No, until 50 for the
20.
So
20 to 60 for the army, 20 to 50 for the Levium.
military age males.
So military age males, whatever. And then they divide them into camps, and each camp has its banner. We discussed about the purpose of having them each in each tribe. Each one has their own mission that they need to do within the entire unity. And in the center of this beautiful order, there is the heart, there is the soul, which is the Mishkan, which is God's presence. And then from that point on, they're, in a way, this entire time, they were not planning to be 40 years in the desert. We'll figure out later why they end up being 40 years in this. They're preparing, they're setting themselves up to soon, in the future chapter, we will see that soon enter into the promised land, which is really out there, very close to where they're now located. We'll see with the spies that they're sending over. And then suddenly, after they do that, they're going into laws about family relationships, as we discussed, about relationship amongst themselves and among other people. Don't steal. Take care of people properly. They're discussing how men and women need to behave towards others. And then the last one is the relationship towards yourself. So we see relationship towards others, relationship within your own family, and relationship towards yourself. And in that beautiful order, you understand the importance of morality, of structure, and of purity, both of your body and your soul. And then you have, at the end, it's kind of like almost a canopy of God's blessing of the Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohanim, which, by the way, who was the person who took that blessing and made it into a famous full-time, well, songs too, but into a famous movie sign? Which movie was done that was like...
That's above my pay grade.
No, you know that. Star Trek.
Okay.
Vulcan.
Spock.
Spock.
Yeah,
the Vulcan salute. How did he do that?
Yeah, he was doing it like the Kohanim.
Like the Kohanim.
I think Leonard
He was
Nimoy
Jewish.
was a Kohen.
Well,
He was a
and
Kohen,
Leonard Nimoy was Jewish, and he was a very proud Jew from
No
Canada.
question.
Well, let's
Yes.
go back to 3 points that you touched on before we continue. One was that you said earlier, Doc, that by learning these things, you have a duty to bring up your society, the people around you, to a higher level. But let's also go back to the fact that you mentioned about Esther. And Esther was resistant to do it at first because she was afraid of being killed. And Mordecai told her, "What do you think? You were born for this moment. Do not think that you won't be killed as well." And let us remember that the Iranians are our enemies today, but actually we're blood related to them because the child of Esther and Ahasuerus would technically be
Xerxes.
Jewish, and he was. And that's how the Babylonian period became, because they were all brought back to Babylon, where they flourished until a later time. And the last thing was that the rabbi, when I asked him like which rabbis he held by, and he holds by so many, it's good because you can compare all of them. But we mentioned the fact that on the east side, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who was a big gadol, a big tzaddik of our time, he used to go to the mikveh at the same time as the Alta Bayana Rebbe, a blessed memory, and they were on a higher madriga than other people at the time because you needed a shaliach. That's why people went to Rabboim to intercede on your behalf to Hashem Yisbarach.
How is it, Bruce, related to the Parsha? I'm lost.
Well, the fact that when you mentioned Moshe Feinstein, let's remember that there is, we're going to talk about laws that you have to obey. And Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zeitzal, he said, Dina Makut, that if the law of the land is not repugnant to Torah law, then you have to follow it. And we'll get to that point because so many people that I see in court want to tell me how they can't follow the law in the court.
You have a long history in the courts.
Oh yeah, 20 years as a
Amazing.
Supreme Court judge.
Maybe
And-
connect at the end of the parasha where it talks about all the
Yeah.
karbanot that the leaders of the tribes brought.
Right.
And
But-
you met some of the great leaders of the Jewry in the
Yes.
last 60 years, probably, right?
But I think
Yes,
we
he
should have
did.
stayed in the midbar. Excuse me for an extra year. It should have been 41 years
Well,
to
what-
wipe out the slave mentality that what we see today in the Erev Rav who survived and their descendants who turn on their own people today. It's such a
Yeah,
Chilul Hashem,
no question.
and it's heart wrenching to see the other wayward Jews. Even though Lubavitcher Rebbe said he found a pintel yid in every Jew, to see these people cause such harm to the Kahal.
Interesting.
Well, the idea, Bruce, about us doing the Parsha and reviewing it is to elevate everyone with us,
Right.
and to elevate in the process our society, elevate the civilization that we are part of, because this is really the Torah is the pillar of good life. And as we discussed before, to have freedom, you have to have boundaries. And we are trying to understand from the rabbi, how do we define those boundaries within our times? And perhaps, even though we're not supposed to look for a scientific answer or a health reason why pork we should not eat, or other things, because then you say, well, now pork is being tested for trichinosis, you're not going to get this disorder. We need to still try to understand that. So
I would say on this week's parasha, something that we haven't discussed yet is, I think, a major focus. First of all, Bruce, I enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun, really. Yeah,
You could
I
call
could I could talk to you for hours. I see.
we will. It's
We
not.
will.
It's not a
So-
first meeting. It'll
No,
be a continuation.
I think maybe a focus to focus on the parasha itself.
Yeah.
Obviously, we discussed the Nazir, we discussed the priestly blessings, the Birchat HaKanim, which we had on
you,
Shavuos
you
and
should
Shul.
you should tell us about the blessing. What does it
I would love to
mean?
discuss it, but I think earlier on was they set up camp. And this week's parasha, Parshat Naso, not only means to carry, but it means to count. Nasai as rosh b'nei Gershom. And we're counting specifically the Levite camp, the camp where God rested in. And in chapter 5, in Pirkei, it discusses the purification of the camp, which means that as you have Jewish families, right? We all have Jewish families.
Yes.
We're responsible for them. And I think something that's, we discussed that book, The Anxious Generation, right, by Jonathan Haidt. I think a major issue in Jewish homes for the last 2 millennia or last couple of centuries is the idea of making sure our children grow up in a in a pure environment, a purer environment. How would you suggest that you're a doctor of the mind and the body? It talks about the purification of the camp. How would you suggest a person do that in our world?
In our world, first of all, by self-example.
Interesting.
Instead of telling them what to do, you show them how to do. For example, people tell me that, you're running. Why are you running? It was something that actually we discussed with Ross as we were running. That it was something my grandpa used to do when I was a little kid. He used to take me running. So it stayed with me, even though he's in the skies watching over me, I'm sure, from heaven. I am passing it to my children. Now my oldest son is running. My youngest son has been running all the time. My daughter is running. But that's just a small little example, and other behaviors as well. So it depends how you eat at home, how you treat your wife.
So funny. Could I add something onto that?
Please.
In this week's Haftorah, we talked about Shimshon. Samson, we know about Shimshon, Hagibar, Samson, the Nazirite. He was a Nazir from birth. There's a different type of Nazir. Nazir, usually, if you say tomorrow, I'm growing my hair out, I have as much as you do. And I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And you accept the Nazirite for 30 days.
Yeah, but his mother made him a Nazir
Oh, very good. So as Bruce is saying,
from birth.
his mother, there was
She dedicated him to
from
be,
birth. So it says something very interesting. Rabbi Shimon Schwab, the rabbi you probably
Right.
knew from the Upper Manhattan, from Akaladas Yeshua, he says, look at the parasha. The angel comes to the woman, says, you're pregnant, you have a child. Or
He looks like an old man. They don't know yet he's an angel.
You're going to have a child, and he's going to be a Nazir from birth. And she runs to her husband and says, husband, I'm going to have a child. And he's going to be very holy from birth. And Rabbi Schwab says, if you look at the language, this is not the grammatical understanding necessarily. It says the woman ran home to Vayakam Vayelech Manoach. Her husband's name was Manoach. After his wife Yave El Ish, he came to the man. It looked like a man, not an angel. This is
already the second time, by the way. This is the second time. Because the
told,
first time,
the man told her already, and now it's repeating it. Listen. What should be with this child that's going to be born? What do you mean? I already told you, wife, Tishamer. Now, it can mean she should watch. So Rabbi Schwab says it means you should watch.
That's right.
So Dr. Levit's point is brilliant. I would say, chinuch, in educating children, especially your children, it's do as I do, not necessarily as I say. He says, he's asked him, how could I bring up a Nazareth from birth? I like Kedem grape juice. This is not sponsored by Kedem, but I like Kedem grape juice. I like cutting my hair, right? We like short hair, right? I don't know, he's a morgue guy. He works in the morgue. How could I go ahead and bring up a child if I'm not on the same status? So Rabbi Schwab says, if I'm not mistaken, you also need to be a Nazirite. Because yes, you're right, you can't bring up a child in such a manner if you yourself aren't practicing the same things. Which is a brilliant idea of chinuch. When we show our children. When we show our children, right?
right.
Someone said such a beautiful idea. Someone said a big Rosh Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, is a big Rosh Yeshiva, a beautiful person. I'm not going to say his name right now, but he said that his children didn't necessarily go in the way that he wanted them to go. They weren't necessarily chiloni, but they weren't as dati as he wanted them. But he says the cook of the yeshiva, every one of his children are a rabbi or a teacher or a rebbe or yeshiva. So why? Listen carefully.
Head of the yeshiva.
His children all came out like beautiful. Because I know that the cook of the yeshiva always fed the people in the yeshiva, all hundreds of guys in the yeshiva, fed them with a love. Also at his home on Shabbat, he showed the love of Shabbat. He sang Zmirot, songs, the songs of Shabbat. Kariba and Shalom Aleichem, Eshet Chayil. He sang everything, and he showed the love of Shabbat. You know how many people I know that say, "You got like the Shabbat candles, go to shul, come home," and it's aggravating to grow up in such a home because why should I love Shabbat if Daddy, really is not happy on Shabbos? Like, he makes Kiddush angrily, and is Shabbos happy or Shabbos sad? Is Shabbos angry? And I'm not pointing out any specific person, but this cook of the yeshiva, who wasn't the Rosh Yeshiva, wasn't the head of the yeshiva, he was a cook, which is a great job. His children saw the love of Judaism, at his Shabbos table, which made an inspiration for
He
them.
made Judaism
And,
delicious.
and the Rosh Hashanah, right? He said the Rosh Hashanah said, I used to learn Rambam. My man, he's at the Shabbos table. Maybe it was dry. Maybe. The idea is we have to show the truth of. We can't just say, "Oh, do that, learn that, do that." That. It doesn't
Follow
work,
me.
right?
Follow me.
I know. Eyal is a lover of Israel. Every moment he has, he flies there. I went with him
Not enough.
to Tel Aviv. We went to the houses of soldiers who have passed, who were killed on Kiddush Hashem, and the families were mourning them. And we spent a good, I think, 3 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours for each house, talking to the families about their sons who were in the IDF. That's a love of Israel that rubs off beautifully onto your rabbi from across the street, and of course onto your children. They see that, they understand that, and of course you're an IDF soldier, and you have such fond memories of the great Gedolim. Everyone sees that. You live by it. Manoach had to live by it for his child to be successful. There can't be a disconnect. It's interesting.
Yeah.
There was an author. I'm blanking. Who was the great Yiddish authors?
Shalom
Shalom
Aleichem.
Aleichem,
Now,
right?
besides him, he wrote my Tante's Bezdinstuhl.
Yeah.
Okay, we're forgetting what it was. But anyways, basically, okay, not for now. I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now. But the idea was that the parents didn't get along. And
Yeah, of course, he was a rabbi. His father was a
Right.
rabbi. It's the stories
his father
from a
was a
rabbi.
Hasidic
The
rabbi.
the stories
His
from a
mother
rabbi.
was a Kalta Litvak.
Right.
And the
With a
communication-
with a goose thing.
With the goose.
Yeah.
I discussed that with you. But the point was, we're both forgetting. We're both getting a little bit older.
I have it on my desk. I have it on my bed. Next to my bed, I have that book.
I'm embarrassed. I don't remember. The point is, I think the point is from this, you see that all the kids didn't stay religious necessarily. His father was a rabbi. His mother was a rebbitzin. The communicate again. You understand a little bit from the reading of his books that the communication in the house there wasn't one message. There were two separate, distinct messages. It's bothering you, isn't it?
Well, it's bothering me. I'm not gonna give it too much time to do. I actually.
But that's the idea. Manoach comes and says, "You, whatever I told her, you should to shomer. You should do it." It's a bit of an allegory.
He wrote also The Slave.
He wrote a lot.
Uh,
Yeah, let's figure it
okay,
out.
fine.
So, what do you want to talk about the Haftarah? You want to focus on something else? Go ahead.
Oh no! I thought, Bruce, this will be very interesting for you. So the question, and Ross, we've discussed with Ross many times. What is there a scientific reason? Because I always look for the formula. How can we raise a Samson?
How can we raise a Samson?
Right. How can we raise? Because we all are dreaming.
Isaac Basheva singer.
Isaac Bashev singer. That's right.
That's
Isaac
right.
Bashev singer.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank Google.
Thank Google. All right. Isaac Bashev singer. That's
All
right.
right.
So how can you raise a Samson? And you look for little clues and you grasp and you think perhaps that is part of the answer. And if you look at the way that our genes change through nutrition and environment, sorry, I'm just gonna move away from
Go for it.
control of it, yes. And you see that as we are already developing in the womb, we consider it growing, but we're aging. Our genes are going through changes. So he's telling her, don't eat any grape product, don't drink any. From this moment,
during pregnancy,
you're not,
she's not consuming
even during
alcohol.
pregnancy.
You find that by Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, who was going to speak to God. What does his sister say? Says Miriam says he can't nurse from an Egyptian midwife. He has to nurse from a Jewish midwife. And we learn from there the importance of kashrut. I think you're saying something brilliant. Brilliant.
No, I haven't said anything yet.
Go ahead.
Did they have kashrut? Because they
Where?
didn't get it in Egypt. They haven't had the Torah yet.
They
so
had non-kosher animals there for sure.
Exactly.
Fish, crabs, lobster.
Right.
No,
Non-kosher fish.
he mean they didn't know how
They
to
didn't
make
know
it kosher at that moment until they were at
But go ahead. So your point. I interrupted
Sorry.
you
So
as usual. I'm sorry.
no. So there is already a proof. We know that when you are exposed to sugary products, and we discussed with Ross many times during our jogs, because as we jog, we talk about everything from how to protect and defend yourself, and how to politics or medicine, longevity. One of the things that ages you and causes mutations is sugar. And one of the things that in practically everyone increases your glucose levels, glucose spikes, is grapes.
Yeah.
And
And it doesn't matter if it's fructose or sucrose, it's still sugar
Right,
in the end.
right, and at the end it actually ends up being also fat, so it's not even used directly. Your body ends up storing fructose. It's not able to. If it's glucose, a little bit easier. They use it as energy. So what happens is she's not drinking any sugar. He's not they don't have it at home. The child himself is not taking it, and therefore when he's growing, his body can concentrate all his energy into building as opposed to repairing DNA mutations.
That would be great if he couldn't eat fruit roll-ups, but he could eat fruit and sugar.
He could, but the number one worst one for everyone.
I don't think they had gushers back then, but
gushers.
Gushers. It's you probably never saw
We
it.
haven't seen it.
Come to my house to Shabbos. I'll give you some. But the point is, I'm not finding a flaw in your theory. I think yes, you're walking.
Nutrition is very important.
Nutrition is important. No question.
That's the key.
But this is
and
spiritual
sugar.
nutrition.
But he got both.
What do you mean?
Well,
First, he didn't have the grapes.
Yes,
and then
she didn't even have it.
And he took on other responsibilities as
Right.
Nazir, right?
Right.
It could have been Shamshin always had a lollipop in his mouth. It just wasn't a great product. It wasn't from grapes. It was from sugar.
You want
cane.
an excuse to have lollipop and still be
Yeah.
Samson? Okay, we'll help you with that.
The cheesecake he can have. It's a nice idea. I think. I mean, you won't know from looking at me, but I think nutrition is a great idea. I think it's something that Jews should focus on, and it's something that's
We
very
should all
important.
focus on. We should
Yes.
all focus on.
Thank you for the
Anyway.
invitation to your jogs, by the way. I appreciate it.
It's always there.
Yes, same place,
Just
same
throw a
time.
pebble in my window.
Working
Jump
out.
out. Okay, interesting. So, the Birchas Kahanim. Interesting. We had it this past Shavuos in outside Israel. In Israel, one of the best things I love about Israel is that every day you can walk into a shul, a synagogue, whether Ashkenazi or Sephardi, and the Kohanim go up and they bless you with not the Vulcan, with the Kohanim, right? They bless you. And you go to, I love being blessed. Giving it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. So it's a Torah ordained bracha, and the Kohanim bless in exile outside Israel. Even though many of the great Gedolim tried to reinstitute by Ashkenazim the Birchos Kahanim every day, it never took hold for many reasons. Sephardim do make Birchot Kahanim every day. So if you go to the Sephardic shul over here and you want to get a special bracha every day, you can get one by Shacharit. Okay. But it's a 3-step bracha, and I saw a very interesting idea. What's the last bracha? If you look over here in the Parsha, V'yasem lecha
Shalom.
shalom. What's the penultimate blessing? Judge, what's the best thing a person could have in the world?
Good health.
And beyond that, good health, of course. You should be healthy.
You should have a family of B'nai Torah.
Fine, true. But how do you get there? The last thing is shalom. What's shalom? Judge, what's shalom?
Peace.
Describe to me a good piece.
So what the doctor touched on is that your body should be a sanctuary. Because how could you desecrate the image of Hashem
Right.
and then raise a Nazir? Impossible.
Right.
That's interesting. I didn't do it, but thank you for giving me credit.
Yeah, that's true. But why is peace? It's interesting. I'm a rabbi,
So
and I speak
I'll
to a lot
jump
of
in
people.
on this one.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So
Please.
since peace means be peaceful, right? So we're talking about stress, right? And hormones of the deal with stress destroy our body as well, right?
Correct.
So if you find peace, you no longer stress as much, right? You find tranquility, you find balance, you find
Your blood pressure's down.
your blood pressure is
I'm
down.
going right into the medical.
You
over
find
here.
equilibrium with the world. Hence, you don't struggle. Hence, there's less stress. It doesn't destroy you as much. You live stronger. You
Right.
live longer.
And you become whole, which is also shalem.
Shalom is whole, but I think the article says it beautifully over here. If I may read this, it says one may have prosperity, you can have money, you can have health, food and drink, but if there's no peace, it's worthless. If there's constant machlokas, the husband and the wife are fighting. He could be a billionaire. We've seen many billionaires in the press who are completely in tatters, right? Therefore, the blessings are sealed. All 3 blessings. V'yasim l'chashon. But I saw a beautiful idea I want to share with you. Why does it say v'yasim l'chashon? V'yasim, like the last bracha of Shemona Esrei, sim shalom. Sim shalom, place peace.
Place.
Why not us shall make peace? So Rabbi Friend, who's a Rebbe in Nerisol, Baltimore, he quotes from Rabbi Zucker. I'm just quoting from who quoted. He says there are 2 ways to make shalom. The judge will tell you. A court case comes to him with 2 business partners, right? They're fighting like cat and dogs. A multi-million-dollar case. What do you tell them? Split up. You take half the business. You take care of the business. You guys obviously cannot reconcile. You're calling this guy a Russia and a Goslin. He's a stealer. He robbed the business. He's calling you a robber.
But when they won't do it, especially where children are fighting over Yerusha,
So you tell
the
him,
judge has to decide.
right?
And therefore, no one will. You're not King Solomon.
You can't
You're not
split the baby.
Shlomo, Can't cut the baby in half.
Or you could split the estate in half, and then they go their separate ways. That's also shalom. When the brothers don't talk to each other, even though it's terrible,
Yeah.
it could be shalom. But sim shalom is a special blessing.
Uh-huh.
Like the judge is trying to get to over here. It's when you take two parts and you merge them together again. The husband and wife are fighting, you merge them together again. Sim shalom. It's a blessing of increased importance in life. Very easy to split.
How do you figure out from sim shalom? It means place shalom.
Sim shalom. Place. That's his idea.
It sounds like seams. You put the seam.
Oh, very good. Sim shalom.
You seam it back.
You place it, you merge it. That's his idea, and I think it's a beautiful idea because sometimes we say, like the King Solomon, King Shlomo, split the baby in half. You guys go your separate ways. I've met rabbis who tell couples, get divorced. Not flippantly, but like, okay, it seems like you can't reconcile. And other rabbis or other, marriage counselors who are good, they can understand the issues between the husband and wife, and in the cases where they could reconcile, they reconcile. That's sim shalom. So that's the last bracha. You have three blessings. Yeah, Yivrach Hashem b'shmecha, Yar Hashem p'nei b'lecha v'chunecha, Yisa Hashem p'nei b'lecha. That's Hashem should throw countenance and favor. We'll see to whom. And then V'yasim l'chasham should be sealed together. That every blessing that God gave you, you should be able to experience it and live with it, with shalom, together with a wife, with a family, with a spouse, with children, grandchildren, Mitzvah Hashem, great-grandchildren, a peaceful partner, right? A person can have everything. He's lacking I love what you said, Ross said, he's stressed, he's spent, his neighbors, killing him. It's an inside joke.
Making noise at night.
Making noise at night. That's you. So the point is, when you're not stressed and you have what you need, that's the sim shalom. And we daven for it. The last bracha in Shemona Esrei is what? Sim shalom, tovo, vracha.
Right.
Shalom, peace is the most important thing. And you see how we bless our children. That we give this blessing when? Friday night.
Yeah.
Friday night. Every Friday night, we're supposed to bless our children or grandchildren with this bracha. We're not Kohanim. We give this bracha to our children. It's an amazing thing that we do. And it's about peace. It's about blessing and count. It's not about war. It's not about hate. Mm-hmm. The focus is peace. It's a nice thing.
I think this would be a wonderful way to end this Parsha by wishing all of you guys peace, and to say that when you want to achieve peace, you have to speak peace, you have to act peace, and then others will follow. Because if your mouth speaks peace, but your hands
throw Molotov cocktails,
right, this will never achieve wholeness and lack of stress and unity. So
wow,
thank
Doc.
you.
Oh, yeah.
You're amazing.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for the
You
opportunity.
guys are amazing. Thank
you,
you,
Russ.
Russ. Bruce, you guys want to say what was your take from today's?
A lot of things. You all aptly said your individual opinions, and we related it to the Torah, and we could see that every yid has to make sure to have a Nazir. If you really want to, like I said, you have to build a sanctuary to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in yourself. You can't desecrate your image. You can't have tattoos, and that worries me very much when we see our youth today.
You're a purist. You're a purist. It's hard. It's hard.
I'm not a purist.
You're old school.
I not old school. I worry about the future of our kahal. If we see
I
these
see what
type
you're
of
saying.
people.
So what you're saying is you do a little bit and then it's a slippery slope. You
Yes.
start here, you start there, and kind of
Right.
like you end up
So the Nazirite is basically a stopgap.
a stopgap.
A stopgap.
Interesting idea. What about you, Ross? What was your kind of
peace
like?
was very interesting. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
I enjoyed it.
I love this guy. Shabbos morning, 9 o'clock. Okay. I'm in sales, right?
Well, I think he's an example for his kids as well.
amazing.
I see
I
how
love-
he is with the kids, and
Yeah. He's
He
raising
teaches
his
me-
own army.
Rosh, how long have you known each other?
He teaches
20 years about 15 years, 20 years?
We know each other.
Yeah.
I would say 15 years.
Yeah.
Easy.
We've both grown since then.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank you.
great Shabbos. Enjoy the parasha.
like